We are live. Welcome to U-571 Thoughts Film. I guess I should start by briefly stating, no, I'm not doing this video now because this movie is like comforting in a really bad time due to Corona. I was always going to do this movie today. I've been planning it for several months, long before, I heard anything about Corona. Now, this video contains spoilers and yeah, this is not a review. This is a series of, well, thoughts that I had while watching as well as before watching. I got this on sale, so anything negative I say in this is not out of bitterness for money wasted. Now, this is the first time I watch it. Not entirely sure if I'm going to watch it again. And, let's see. I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies and movies in general. I also love Cronenberg's The Fly. And let's see, yeah, so let's see. My own quote-unquote film critic rating for this, I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10 for the, it's competently made. My personal rating, I guess, probably around a 5 out of 10. I'm not gonna get into any rants here, but I do agree with those that say that this is really not the... If this movie had been made in, like, 1940, okay, yeah, sure, you want to psych people up to, to go to war against Nazi Germany. But the fact that it's made the way it is so long after, I hope there wasn't, like, a rise in hate crimes against, Germans living in America after this came out, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Let's see. I'm not talking about the fact that, of course it's going to be on the side of the Allies, but it didn't have to demonize the Germans the way it does. Now, let's see, there are other inaccuracies that bother me, but personally I try not to, like, I hate that it doesn't, in reality, it was the British who secured the Enigma machine. I really don't... There's no reason for this movie to take that away from the British and claim it was done by Americans. They're in the IMDb reviews, you find a number of people saying, why didn't you just make it about an actual American, huge victory? Just pick one of the American ones and make your movie about that. You don't have to take credit for something someone else did. But yeah, I'm not going to go on a huge rant about it. If you do want that sort of thing, there are several IMDb reviews that are really great in just really digging deep in that. Let's see. I really don't feel like it does anything that Das Boot didn't do better. At least nothing that's particularly interesting. Yeah, some of the, like, patriotism and such is done, is not in Das Boot, but it's in other American movies. Now, let's see. So, yes, I have watched Das Boot many times. I was going to rewatch it to compare, but the version I have is 216 minutes. Yeah, I'm sorry, I have a hard time sitting still for that long, even now that you can't leave your house. Now, let's see, I've watched the well-made Hunt for Red October and the well-meaning Crimson Tide. I mean, politically, I am on the side of the movie Crimson Tide. I just really feel like they didn't... They have the right yeah, the right point of view, excuse me, but they don't do a good job of, like, handling the subject. So, let's see, yeah, briefly, I have watched the movie Enigma, pretty good for what it is, and not a terrible angle on the Enigma Machine story. Other than that, this is the only movie about the Enigma Machine that I have watched, and yeah, I guess I'm restating, but I am well aware that this movie is hugely inaccurate, and it bothers me, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. I know that, what was it called? I don't remember, but Benedict Cumberbatch was in a movie where it actually is the British. And, you know, Alan Turing, I want to say, is who he's playing. So I'm glad that the real story did get told. I find that much more fascinating of a story than this. But yeah, I do think that helps. That, you know. Now, that brings us to the first section, which is called Notes Taken While Watching. If you love the movie, you're probably not going to like this section much. It's going to be mostly riffing MST3 King. There are no English subtitles on my DVD, so that's why if I get stuff wrong, I voice type these notes for those not aware. It's simply not possible for me to make a note without talking with them. I do not pause movies to make notes. Yeah, that is not good for the DVD. Now, and yeah, as such, I have literally zero idea what the German characters are saying. So if I say something in this video that contradicts them, that's why. Now, as I understand, the submarine corps had a lot of Germans who were not really Nazis. They, I mean, in Nazi Germany, there wasn't really such a thing as resisting, military service. You just had to do it. I forget exactly what the punishment was if you refused, but I mean, basically, yeah, you know, just because someone fought in the German military does not mean that they were a Nazi, and the submarine corps was apparently especially apolitical. So anyway, so yeah, I'm going to try to refer to them as German instead of Nazi, since every German we meet in this entire movie is, well, yeah, the Germans you meet in this movie are either submarine uh, crew, I guess is what that's called, or their crew on the destroyer. I do not know if the destroyer crew would have been Nazi. I'm gonna go with German. Now, let's see. I'm not saying that the Nazis were not horrible. I'm just saying not all Germans were Nazis. I get why Thomas Kretschmann would want to get away from the T-virus, but joining the military, becoming a submarine, I'm gonna go with captain, for the Germans does still seem like an overreaction. I see Thomas Kretschmann really desperate and upset in the submarine at the start, and all I can think about is he must be kicking himself over not bringing Nemesis with him on this trip. We go to the American the party. One of the sailors at the table has Reichert on a chair. Wow. Matthew McConaughey looks very tense when we first see him. Does he not realize it's going to be all right, all right, all right? I'm afraid I couldn't get a date on such short notice. Why didn't they rewrite this line in the script after casting Matthew McConaughey? You're just not ready to take a command of your own. You are not the ultimate badass. But it'll come. It is not game over, man. And, I think it's Matthew McConaughey is like, oh, they have 48 hours of recreational time or something, And the guy's like, not no more. And Matthew McConaughey like pauses. He's trying to figure out if the double negative means that they do still have 48-hour leave or not. You know, is he using it for effect, or do they cancel each other out? Keith David does not look very comfortable in the submarine. He probably should be taking care of his kids since Matt recently went blind and all. She's old, but she'll hold. The water may be cold, now you've been told. And yeah, Thomas Kretschmann and the other Germans shoot some survivors. And obviously, this is meant to be a kick the puppy moment so that Americans don't forget that the Germans were bad guys during World War II. Huh. I like to think that that's just how Thomas Kretschmann, maybe not always reacts, but always feels like reacting when people talk crap about Resident Evil Apocalypse. This is your brain. This is your brain at extreme water pressure. Any questions? So, yeah, Bill Paxton talks to Matthew McConaughey and explains why he's not putting him in charge. And Keith David briefs the men. Buttons notwithstanding, they really look good in black. Do you read me? And they're like, yes. Distinguished intelligence officer and established author. And they use light to send a signal to the other submarine. You know, that war was so many years ago. Today, people don't appreciate just how difficult it was to use Morse code to send emojis. The film is pretty decent at building tension and suspense, and once they start shooting the Germans, that's also perfectly competently done. You know, it's not over stylized like Michael Bay. It's not like, you know, I I I don't like Jonathan Mostow movies. This one I mostly dislike because of the anti-German thing and the stolen valor. And technically, some of that isn't, it was in the script, but on the commentary track, he confirms that he watched Das Boot and didn't believe that the men would not be avowed Nazis. Now, but yeah, he knows how to direct action scenes. He does in this, Terminator 3, as much as I hate that movie. I don't remember about Surrogates. I just remember how bad of a movie it was. But yeah, I think it was okay at action as well. And one of the Germans was in his bed waiting for a good chance to shoot. I appreciate that since this is an R-rated movie, even though he was already in bed, these are not bullets that just make you real sleepy. Pretty cool explosions, like it's clearly overdone. There's no way it would actually look quite like that, but it's an American movie, and again, like, it's not like over the top and headache inducing. Clar, what does that mean? Le Grill, what the hell is that? And they start using the German submarine, and it's like, come in, shouting orders, sir. Them shouting and pulling levers and all this stuff while the music plays, it's either really effective or great parody. So the torpedoes fired by the other German submarine at the Americans in the German submarine missed, but the torpedoes fired by the Americans from their German submarine hit. I guess the other Germans should have just flipped that switch and pretended to be Americans running a German submarine. I have to wonder if movies like this ever go meta and the bad guys realize, oh crap, we're the bad guys. That's why we can't hit anything. And they fish Thomas Kretschmann out of the water. English, you German, do you speak it? Do what you can. If there's something you can't do, and I want to be 100% clear on this, don't do it. This is crazy. This whole thing is crazy. The reason that line made it into the script was actually that the actor read the script, muttered those words in response to all the inaccuracies, but was overheard by someone else working on the movie and had to pretend he was ad-libbing. I just realized I forgot to set my phone on silent. If you will just excuse me for a few seconds, and there it is. Again, tense and suspenseful as the plane heads across the submarine, and we wonder if it really is going to strafe them. Real brief, the other things I was talking about was when they're sailing, whatever, yeah, I'm gonna go with sailing, in the, whatever, the little group of them, they're headed over to the German submarine, and they're going to, pretend to be German and shoot the Germans on the submarine, including the ones already on top, so they're primed and ready to shoot these Americans. That's legitimately tense and suspenseful, and Mostal, I feel like I guess you could make an argument he milks it, but I don't feel like he milks it excessively. Milk it dry, I guess, is the saying. When Thomas Kretschmann shot the American, and the American just kept running at him as he was shooting him, I mean, the movie just went full 300 at this point. Tense and suspenseful, and good reveal, as we wonder if Thomas Kretschmann did survive the struggle with the other guy. I mean, as a sort of David versus Goliath guerrilla warfare spy story, this is, in fact, not a terrible concept. Dive, 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 dive. So rise is what you're saying. Also tense and suspenseful when they go under the boat. Fun fact, those are not actually depth charges, they're just copies of this movie. Very destructive. Can you fix the torpedo tube? There is no try. If we are caught, we will be tortured without mercy. They will make us watch Jonathan Mossel movies until we break. Let's man the ship, and then ship the man. And yeah, real short this time. Did not have a lot to say, just thought of jokes as I was doing it. Okay, next section. Notes taken before watching. Excuse me. Now, this was written by David Ayer. I know all of his directorial work except Bright. And Sabotage and Suicide Squad I like, although they definitely have problems. The rest of his directorial work I love. I'm only now watching stuff he wrote that he didn't direct himself, except for Taking Lives, which I remember not liking, SWAT, which I remember as being okay, and Training Day, which I love. And yes, I am, this is not me doing more videos on Jonathan Mossel movies. This is me doing videos on movies that David Ayer wrote, including ones I have, both ones I have seen before and ones I haven't seen before. So yeah, when I talked about Terminator 3 in my old vlog, I said, addressed to Mostal, dude, I'm not even going to watch your stupid submarine movie. I have no reason to believe that you could possibly impress me. And he didn't really. At that time, I did not realize that David Ayer wrote it. I already did love David Ayer, because I did that video like in 2009 or 10, and David Ayer, I've absolutely loved his work since 2008, when I watched Street Kings in theaters. Now, I was wondering if there was going to be a lot of plot lines going on in this movie, a lot of subplots. Now, yeah, the inaccurate depiction of the Enigma machine in this is somewhat helped by the more recent movie about the Enigma machine, The Imitation Game, which is actually much closer to what really happened and places, actually highlights that this was done by British, not Americans. Yeah, this, I read the IMDb reviews and other I read all the reviews I could find of this. The basically the common thread throughout was the movie's not realistic and it's propaganda, but it does have great sound design and it is very tense. And yeah, I pretty much agree. Now, yeah, so a lot, I never got around to counting if it was most, of the voted most useful IMDb reviews. Sorry, let me just briefly correct something. I said I read every review I could get my hands on. I did not read every single IMDb review, because if I recall, there are a lot of them, because people were reviewing this back in 2000 when it came out. It's because of more recent movies, I've been reading all the IMDb reviews, so I got mixed up. And I also only read the first 5 pages of Rotten Tomatoes user reviews, but Metacritic, I read every single review, and Rotten Tomatoes, I read all the critic reviews. But I only read, was it the 25 most voted most useful IMDb reviews? But yeah, I'm going to start over. Lots of the voted most useful IMDb reviews talk about the historical inaccuracies. I gotta stop. I keep trying to talk faster than my mouth will be able to keep up with. I gotta stop doing that. They talk about the historical inaccuracies, how it's propaganda more than anything else. Clearly, this movie pissed off a lot of people, in particular the demonization of German soldiers, and how this claims that Americans did what British did. I'm not going to go into detail about the inaccuracies in this video. I'm not going to go into how important it is, but for those saying that it doesn't matter, please keep in mind that for a lot of people, this is going to be one of, maybe even the strongest memory they have of hearing about submarine warfare and the Enigma machine. A lot of people are never going to accept that the events depicted here are not historical fact. And once you get past the reviews that criticize this, for inaccuracies, they still criticize the movie just for the movie making. The filmmaking. Now, yeah, I should just briefly say I am well aware. I knew long before I read about this movie that, like, if I had seen this movie when it came out, I would have immediately said that's not how it went about the Enigma machine, because my father is a huge World War II buff, and he's been telling me about the Enigma machine since I was old enough to understand words. Now, I'm inclined to forgive David Ayer for this movie because of the movie Fury. I feel that movie mostly makes up for how inaccurate this is. I'm not sure Jonathan Mostoff has done anything to earn forgiveness. So, let's see. Yeah, and I dislike Terminator 3 and Surrogates a lot. I haven't watched any other movie by Mostoff than these three, and he hasn't made that many others. I heard good things about, what was it called, Break In 2, Electric Boogaloo, something. It has the word break in it, I'm pretty sure. And it apparently also has Jack Noseworthy. I quite like that guy, so maybe I'll give it a chance at some point. I do really have to appreciate that someone... I realize this probably isn't how it actually went down, but I like to think that it is. At some point, someone in Jack Noseworthy's, like, one of his ancestors, like, they looked at their family members trying to decide what name to pick, and they were like, they are just unbelievably deserving of noses. Noseworthy, that's going to be our name. Now, let's see. But yeah, and David Ayer also, he has gone on record and said, I'm really sorry that this movie is inaccurate. My grandfather was a SEAL, I think it was, and I would hate if someone made a movie, stealing his valor. So, I mean, basically, we gotta remember, back when David Ayer wrote this movie, he just had to get work. That's why it's so different from every other movie he's made. This is such... I mean, I keep bringing up Michael Bay, or is this only the second time? Anyway, I lost count. I wasn't counting, and that's why I lost it. This movie could easily have been, like, directed by Michael Bay. Like it would have been more, but it's not entirely unlike Michael Bay, you know. I mean, and that's very unlike David Ayer. In at least in that, like, he tends to be more critical of military and police and such, where Michael Bay deifies them basically. And yeah, I mean, yeah, David Ayer, he just had to get work. He had to sell scripts so that he, you know, keep the lights running. This is before, you know, keeping in mind, this is pretty much the only movie he's made that really does not criticize. Yeah, you know, after this, he, you know, yeah, actually, I'm not 100% certain when he wrote the script for this compared to Training Day, but anyway, Training Day is much more critical of those employed by the government to carry out violence in the name of protection. Let's go with that. Now, the editing room's abridged script for this movie was actually written back in 2000 when the movie came out. It's an early script by Alex W., who even back then was incredible at this. Good stuff, no comments, and let's see, I might read some of it aloud. You know, just make sure you go and read it. If you can take a joke about this movie, make sure you read it, because it's great. I'm just gonna real quick scroll through and let's see. Harvey Keitel says, we have to use the speed up Nazi sub because our shiny new American sub got blown up. I guess we should have left the sonar on when we entered enemy waters. Yeah. And Matthew McConaughey goes, oh no, depth charges. Everyone holds still and sweats. Muffled explosions are heard in between that ping noise. Then there are closer explosions that make everything shake and pipes burst and water spray everywhere. This takes roughly an hour, and everyone who has ever seen an old sub movie is bored to tears. And yeah, every time he puts something in caps, I'm more intense. And although we are deep in Nazi territory in a rapidly failing submarine, if we can just take out this one Nazi destroyer, then we will be perfectly safe and the movie can end. I mean, that's such a great point. It really is ridiculous how it ends on just, you know, them in the raft or whatever it's called, and you know, like they're sailing into the sunset. It's a cowboy movie. It's literally just, and it's so ridiculous. It's just like, just because you can, it really is, and just why not simply have like a less ridiculous, and like when I watch the movie again, you know, I literally just got done watching a movie not long before pressing record. I'm like, there's no way they're gonna get out of there alive. There's, you know, and they have the Enigma machine, so this, I mean, I don't know, is that them tacitly admitting this really isn't how the Allies got their hands on an Enigma machine, you know, because like 10 minutes after the credits start rolling, they get caught and killed, and the machine is like, yeah, anyway. Let's see. You did it, Matthew McConaughey. You're a real sub-captain now. Yippee! Now that was pod raising. A title card explains the film is dedicated to numerous heroic sub-crews during World War II that risked their lives to crack Nazi codes. It fails to mention they were all British. And Okay, yeah, and I listened through the commentary track. Now, I'm briefly gonna note that the basically the DVD I bought is disc one of the two disc set, and disc two has a bunch of DVD, like special features. But it was cheaper to get just the one disc, and I didn't really feel like paying more just to watch special features on a movie that I don't care that much about. I'm not unhappy that I watched it, but yeah, the like yeah, so the only DVD extra that I was able to watch off this was the commentary track. And let's see, yeah, so I'm just gonna say the most noteworthy things. So yeah, if you haven't listened to it and you're considering listening to it, Jonathan Mostow is the only person on the commentary track. He was very passionate to the film, and he wanted to make sure to cast real Germans for the German submarine crew, even though he doesn't speak German. He could tell the difference between ones who were speaking German, who grew up speaking German, and ones who learned it later in life. And Thomas Kretschmann did not love playing a Nazi in his first American movie, and they wanted to make sure the set was exactly right for the sticklers. He worked hard on the authenticity, and yeah, and Jonathan Mostow talks about that the movie isn't supposed to be a modern deconstruction, it is supposed to be an old-fashioned adventure. So he did understand what he was doing with that. It's not that he didn't realize that, other people were deconstructing this sort of thing in a, yeah, I'm not 100% certain when he recorded the commentary track, but 2000, I think there's a good chance he recorded it like months later or something, not like years down the line, like, I don't know. As you can, yeah, if you watch the first section, you know that watching this, when I saw Bill Paxton, my mind went to Aliens. When they did the Aliens commentary track, it was, I don't know, 14 years later or something, something like that. Possibly more, since they didn't do commentary tracks back when it was made. They did do some like minor documentary stuff for some movies, and if you buy the VHS copy of the movie, maybe they'll put a documentary on there, or some of it would air on TV to advertise the movie or something, but they didn't do commentary tracks before DVDs came out. And let's see. Yeah, and Milestone praises Jack Noseworthy and says he should be in all those movies, which, like, that's hilarious watching this. Like, Jack Noseworthy is nowhere in Terminator 3, and I'm pretty sure he's not in Surrogates either. Now, I don't remember. I think there's at least one more movie that Milestone has done since. I don't know. I haven't watched it, and I don't really know anything about it. And let's see. Yeah, I don't know if this is true, but Mossov claims that, the black guy on the ship was Eddie was his name apparently. Since he's there being a cook, that would be all they would allow him to do during World War II. Excuse me, since he's black, but he would be trained to do all the other jobs. Excuse me, and that's why he's able to take over for another guy later in the movie. John Bon Jovi apparently didn't bring any ego to set. And yeah, and he said, they show a real submarine early on. Excuse me, gotta find a way to sit that's comfortable for my back. yeah, show a real submarine early on in the movie so that the audience has an easier time accepting the miniatures with depth charges as the real submarine, which obviously they can't use a real submarine for that. He admits that in real life the Germans didn't shoot very many, that they encountered off broken boats. But yeah, the machine gunning is there to remind the audience these are the bad guys. And then he goes on to claim that Das Boot is, he does say it's the only inaccurate thing about it, but, the German submariners were Nazis hardcore, and he explains that the reason the egg crushing is in the movie is because some audience members legitimately didn't understand the danger of going too deep underwater. I'm sorry, but that is legitimately kind of sad. Everybody knows that the pressure underwater is higher than above water, and that the further down you go, but they really they couldn't imagine that even a submarine would eventually be crushed. Anyway. And he put the set on a gimbal for when they're eating let's see, yeah, and the food kept sliding on the table, and sometimes the gimbal would go too far, and soup would end up in people's laps, and they couldn't help but laugh, and they'd have to do another take. And the actors in the boat on the outside were being sprayed with water, and because it was so much water, they had to use salt water, and it was 15 degrees Fahrenheit, but the actors apparently loved being in the elements. And okay, yeah, so he said, for action, the camera should be, what's that? See? Okay, never mind, I cannot tell what that's supposed to say. And he didn't plan on someone bumping into the camera, it just happened, but he was really happy about it when he saw it in the dailies, and he said we have to use that take. And the sweat you see on their faces is, what's that say? It's some kind of water. And the set is also limited, but it is convincing. I have to agree. Geography is important in the movie. I tried to show the audience where they are. I think he did a pretty good job. I was never really confused. I don't like when the camera is like an MTV video, the camera whipping around and you don't know where you are. So, yeah. And I think sometimes that can work, but I agree it wouldn't be right for this movie. And he says there actually was a crew that, got another submarine working. It just wasn't done in minutes. It took them longer. And the music was made with a full 100-piece orchestra, and 10 minutes with them cost more than the first movie they made together. And any moment you're hearing hundreds of sound effects edited together by a really talented team. And when they're standing in the rain on top of the submarine, what does that say? Yeah, the submarine is actually completely stationary, but the camera is moving and makes it look like the submarine is moving. And that it's almost a different cast of characters in the second half of the movie than the first half. And for the depth charges, he had, let's see, he said to the actors what was happening so they could react to them. There was nothing there for them to actually react to, unlike some other scenes in the movie, and that's why he uses scenes like this to audition actors. To get actors who can imagine things that aren't actually happening. He praises the camera operator who films the explosions inside the boat. He says that he doesn't think his next movie is going to have a lot of action. His next movie was Terminator 3. And he says story more important than action. Once again, his next movie was Terminator 3. Now, Originally, there wasn't going to be a plane rescuing them at the end. They were going to drift to the coast. There was a plane? I guess I missed that. Okay, fair enough. I guess that does mean that they didn't just sail. Anyway. And the plane is a miniature, but it looks convincing. Excuse me. I thought I got rid of that before I hit record. Excuse me. And one part of the point of the text at the end is to let people know that actually happened. And originally he wanted a curtain call for the actors, but legal, what is that? Say, contractual obligations, it wasn't possible. You would have had to run a bunch of other credits before the curtain call, so it would have been weird. So that's why, you know, yeah, that's not a spoiler. The movie Endgame, after a bunch of the credits, there are, you know, it's not quite a curtain call where they, you know, where you see them, but you see like they wrote their signature, the main cast, you know, they're at the end of the, you know, that's why that isn't the first thing you see. That's because the contractual thing says you have to run all these other credits before. So yeah, which I'm really glad they did, and I don't care that much about it for this movie, honestly. And he said the music is very effective, even if you aren't watching the screen. He wanted people to leave the movie on feeling proud and strong. That's why the music is something something. And yeah, so that was also a, relatively speaking, short section. IMDb, Wikipedia, and critics sites is the final section. So yeah, so the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is excellent cinematography and an interesting plot accompanied by a talented cast and crew make U-571 a tense thriller. It has a 68%. Yeah, I can see. That makes pretty decent sense. And yeah, it has 115 reviews and 78 of them are fresh. The audience score is 62% with 56,819 user ratings, an average rating of 3.47. Now, I'm gonna try to only read the really interesting, yeah, more like a Star Trek television episode, yeah, kind of. And both a rousing action thriller and near parody of the rah-rah American military adventures that filled screens in the 40s and 50s. And I've never seen a movie as dependent on a fancy sound system. The film needs something more to make it interesting and different. Yeah, very true. Without much charge and even less depth. I'm sorry, I am a huge mark for a play on words in a review. That's, yeah, that's great. And let's see. Excuse me. Okay, I apologize for the dead air. There's just a lot of these reviews that I don't feel, because I really do gotta watch my back, literally, these days. So I'm gonna, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go into exactly why, because it's not necessarily that interesting. Alas, it is It's a noisy, cliche-ridden, incomprehensible mess. It's an insult not just to war veterans, but to the audience. It says substandard. Now, one-dimensional acting. U-571 leaves no soggy submarine story cliche unturned. And let's see. This is one sub that deserves to sink. Its perspective is that of a well-drawn, reasonably thoughtful comic strip. And the submarine goes deep, but the story never does. A strange, volatile mix of history and movie cliches. Horrendously inept and vapid. U-571 could sure use some depth. It ain't sunk, but this flick could have used a life raft. Mid-range. And resembles more the bulk of war movies before Vietnam than it does anything made in the last quarter century. That's very true, and it really is. Like, how do you make a movie so glorifying of war? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really doesn't feel like... It feels like a movie made before America had ever lost a war. Before the American public found a war genuinely distasteful, like with Vietnam. Now, come on in, the water's fine. Now, let's see. A ripping yarn. Not a bad yarn. I had a blast watching it. I don't know how loud that is to the microphone. I hope it's not too bad. I'm afraid there's not anything. I guess it's one of my neighbors working some sort of... I don't know if it's like a chainsaw for the hedge or something. I don't know exactly. Wait, that's not called a chainsaw. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's some kind of engine thing. Let's see. And Okay, and here we go with the user reviews. Excuse me. And okay, so I am gonna go through. As many of these as I can without just reading aloud. And let's see. Yeah. So almost through. Yeah, so here we go with Metacritic reviews by professional critics, and this has a 62 Metascore out of 100, based on 35 critics, 22 positive, 11 mixed, and 2 negative. Meaning that the reviews on this were not too negative. I feel like the mixed thing would be good for Rotten Tomatoes to add to their, although I realize that would make it harder for the tomato meter to, but yeah. Okay, so I hadn't marked any of those as worth reading, so here we go with the user reviews, and it has a 6.7 based on 43 ratings, 28 positive, 9 mixed, and 6 negative. And okay, here we go. IMDb. So here are the taglines. You won't come up for air until it's over. Heroes are ordinary men who do extraordinary things in extraordinary times. Those are definitely the right taglines for this kind of movie. That really is, yeah. And IMDb trivia. A History Channel review of this movie, which aired soon after its release, included a German World War II U-boat commander. At the end of the show, he was asked for his opinion of the authenticity of the movie. His response was, "They got one thing right in the movie. There were U-boats in the North Atlantic during the Second World War." That's like a Tom Clancy level of you screwed this up with like I let me think. I want to say the movie is The Sum of All Fears, and he was so bitter and angry, and I don't blame him because they just the so inaccurate, and he's sitting next to like the director, and the director's taking it pretty nicely. He's taking it well, but yeah, basically, he's constantly taking apart all these inaccuracies, and at one point there's like a, let me think, I think it's yeah, they there's a like yeah, I think Tom Clancy points to, he says that, is that supposed to be a torpedo, because it's, and he explains why it's wrong, and the other guy, I don't remember what he says it's actually supposed to be, but it's something like, I don't remember. Let's just go, no, I think it's like a depth charge. Oh, what's wrong for that too? And just, no, like, that's a real fun. If you like really sarcastic, yeah. I mean, that it was like the kind of It was like Harlan Ellison level of bitter. Yeah. Okay. And here we go. In a 2006 interview with BBC's Radio 4's The Film Program, co-writer David Ayer said he didn't feel good about portraying that it was Americans who captured and decoded the Enigma machine and not the British. He said the studio was just thinking of the US box office, and he added, both of my grandparents served during World War II, and I would be very upset if someone tried to downplay their achievements in the war. So he's owned up to it, and yeah, honestly, I can completely see, yeah, they were just thinking, well, Americans aren't going to watch it if it's not the Americans who are the heroes. Now, since I didn't watch this movie before, I haven't read, I copied it in, but I haven't read, for example, the IMDb goofs and stuff like that. So I'm gonna real quick scan this, just skim it. I'm gonna try not to leave too much dead air. And I am, because, yeah, none of this is stuff. Okay, let's see. So this is, I think I'm gonna go through the anachronisms pretty quick. I don't think there's stuff in here that's all that interesting. So, audiovisual and synchronized, I'm also gonna skip through. Continuity, also skipping. Let's find some more interesting, like, okay, also skipping through errors in geography. Factual errors, some of these can be interesting. So, let's see. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail, but apparently the sonar ping sound effect is wrong. And I love this phrasing. That wouldn't be there in the first place makes no sense. Again, just this frustration is palpable in some of these, you know. I try not to let that really bother me anymore because it's just a really frustrating experience if you apply that to all these, you know, mainstream movies. They really get a lot of these things wrong. Miscellaneous, also skipping through quickly, and plot holes. Let's see if there's something interesting here. So, and so, now, yeah, there weren't really any. I felt like, okay, revealing mistakes, also skipping through. How about some incorrectly, huh, I guess there weren't any, okay. Incorrectly regarded as goofs. I find some of those are the most interesting. Okay, so here we have the quotes. I think I'm just gonna quickly skip through them as well. But there are a bunch. I do think some of the dialogue is pretty good. Certainly memorable. And let's see. Okay, so alternate versions. There's 3 items And one of them is that the German version has a title card at the beginning saying the movie is completely fictitious. That sounds like a very German thing to do. I don't have anything against the Germans, but that's like they are sticklers for accuracy, especially with this sort of thing. Yeah, that that sounds like a very, yeah. And let's see. And the IMDb frequently asked questions. Is this a historically accurate film? No, it was never intended to be a documentary. Inspired by actual events, as the majority of World War II movies are. The Enigma machine was actually first captured by the British, a fact the filmmakers acknowledged in the end credits of the movie. I'm sorry, it's just it's hard for me to not read palpable frustration into the. It's like it's okay, calm down. You're allowed to like the movie, you know. Let's see. And yeah, and it goes into if U-boat crews really did shoot survivors. Excuse me. And Wikipedia. So I did not read. Let's see. Yeah, I suppose I should just briefly state. I'm half kidding here, but since there is an actual German submarine named U-571, that's why I said at the start of this video that I was talking about the movie, not the submarine. Yeah, I'm I'm partially joking, but I don't want someone to like write a bitter comment. Like I spent a long time watching this video. I really thought you were going to talk about the submarine itself. And let's see. And yeah, Tony Blair agreed the film was an affront to British sailors. Prime Minister at the time. Now, let's see. I wow, that was a very detailed plot synopsis. That yeah, you could probably if you read that and didn't watch the movie, you could possibly convince someone that you did. Anyway, now the movie did have a PG-13, but it has clear like bloody wounds and such. Did, could movies really get a PG-13 with bloody wounds back then? Anyway, and yeah, this of course, the Wikipedia page does of course have a section entirely devoted to the the various historical inaccuracies rather. Negative portrait of U-boat sailors, historical fates of the submarines, and that actually takes us to the IMDb reviews. I think I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. There it is. So now this is an IMDb review that gave it a 3 out of 10 their one-line summary is Mel Brooks does Das Boot. That's very, yeah, that absolutely is. And another person gave it a 1 out of 10 with the summary Hollywood history. And the first line is, "This is a review written by a specialist on the U-boat warfare." Now, yeah, I briefly wanted to say, actually, yeah, I guess maybe I should, yeah, just briefly. Let's see. One more thing which needs to be mentioned. In an interview in the Washington Post, the director Jonathan Mostow states that the movie Das Boot was based on a lie. That really is a... You really want to say something like that while putting out a movie that's this inaccurate, but yeah. It pretended that the captains and crews were submariners first, only incidentally Nazis. They were dedicated Nazis. They had to be to fight that hard. As anyone familiar with U-boat history knows, this is nonsense. It is well known that the U-boat arm was the least political of any of the German military branches in World War II. While some U-boat men were indeed confirmed Nazis, many were not. Men fight hard in every war, not for reasons of ideology, but for reasons of personal survival and out of a sense of duty and obligation to their group or unit. Mostow's opinion on this particular topic is just that, an opinion, apparently not founded on any knowledge of U-boat history or military psychology. And I just want to briefly add to that. I realized that Das Boot was made way back in 1981. Maybe that was before this particular trend started. But when you watch German-made movies that are about World War II, they really don't tend to downplay the Nazis. On the contrary, they tend to be extremely honest about Nazism. So I have an easier time believing that the movie Das Boot got it right than that Jonathan Mostow knows better. I realized that, honestly, the oldest movie that I know for sure is accurate about, you know, oldest German movie that I know for sure is very accurate and honest about the horrors of World War II and Nazism is from 2004. So it is possible that 1981 was before they started being as... No, it's still running. But I really, yeah, I do genuinely think it's very, like, when you watch movies made, at least from 2004 and onwards, made by Germans about Nazis, they are very, like, the a movie like Downfall, for example, you see Hitler as this frail old human being, but it doesn't try to downplay the evil ideas he had. He specific, they have him spell out the way he looks at race, for example, and you hear him say extremely evil things. The yeah, I believe I've made my point. There's another review. 1 out of 10. Sinks with all hands, leaving an ugly, oily stain. Let's see. And another 1 out of 10. U-571 is a movie with a horrible story and contains a lot of false pathos. 1 out of 10. Insulting all around. 1 out of 10. Shipwreck. 2 out of 10. American military pornography. That's really well put, yeah. Military pornography, that is definitely. 1 out of 10. So bad, I was rooting for the Germans. 1 out of 10. A big laugh. 1 out of 10. The worst war movie I've ever seen. 1 out of 10, some kind of propaganda film or what? And let's see, 2 out of 10, propaganda movie 60 years late. Very well put. 2 out of 10, a complete waste of time. Yet more American Hollywood, historical revisionism. 3 out of 10, patriotic and not realistic. 1 out of 10, zingoistic? Does he mean jingoistic? Anyway. Is it like a portmanteau of xenophobic and jingoistic, maybe? I don't know. 1 out of 10. Not unexpected. And yeah, and the, let's see. Yeah, he also points out the inaccuracies. 2 out of 10. You wish to see a good sub movie? Skip this. 1 out of 10. What rubbish. 2 out of 10. What a distortion of the truth. And 1 out of 10. More Hollywood dribble. 3 out of 10. 3 for mildly entertaining. 3 out of 10. Clunky sub action pick, but still fun. 1 out of 10. Utter garbage. 1 out of 10. Total fiction and totally unbelievable. 1 out of 10. An incredibly hideous movie. Awful. 1 out of 10. Plainly disgusting. 1 out of 10. A danger to history. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10. Why will Americans keep trying to change history? 1 out of 10. Comprehensively disappointing. 1 out of 10. Here's what really happened. 1 out of 10. Yuck. 2 out of 10. This film belongs below crush depth. 3 out of 10. Real stupid and unrealistic movie. 4 out of 10. A bad movie made badly. 3 out of 10. Maximum depth reached and exceeded. 3 out of 10. Bad, bad, bad. 1 out of 10. Never left the cinema halfway through a film. This one made it happen. 2 out of 10. Terrible. 1 out of 10. Directed by a naval idiot. ID4 in a can. That really, like, what was like chef's kiss, like, that's perfect. ID4 in a can. That really is an absolutely perfect way to put it. Yeah. 4 out of 10. Let's see. 1 out of 10. Awful war movie with historical revision and manipulation. 3 out of 10. Hollywood rubbish. 2 out of 10. What history? Sucks. 3 out of 10. Plain rubbish. 4 out of 10. On the edge of your tolerance. 1 out of 10. Forget das Boot. And 2 out of 10. Deceitful plotline full of submarine movie cliches. Mediocre rehash of Das Boot. 3 out of 10. The sub floated, the picture tanked. It is an enigma. Waterlogged. A waterlogged shipwreck. 3 out of 10. Oh, hold on. That was a little too quick. Let's see. Now. Yeah, so let's see. In a way, this genre, more than virtually any other, suffers from the cramped restrictions of its underwater setting. there just isn't a lot to do in a submarine, and hence the directors of these films are obviously very limited in the way they can approach the material both visually and dramatically. Thus, we are subjected to the endless, tight close-ups on the men's worried, perspiring faces as they cast their eyes upward and strain their ears during the inevitable depth charge and how low can they go before they break apart sequences. We know that before long we will be watching that needle moving precariously into the red zone on the depth gauge, followed by the customary popping bolts, creaking hull, and spouting water mains as the ship challenges the limits of its diving capabilities. Not one of these subs in the history of movies, by the way, has ever failed this test. And yeah, that's an excellent point. I'm not even sure where the movie would go after that. Introduce an entire new group of people. I mean, it's not like they could pretend that the people could swim outside the sub and survive in conditions that the submarine itself couldn't. So just, yeah. Now, The Dirty Dozen 2000. Let's see. Okay, here's just one thing I don't get. Why is it that Hollywood can make perfectly realistic, critical, and disturbing movies about Vietnam, but if it's a World War II movie, they invariably get into this dirty dozen pseudo-patriotic propaganda. Now who's got the longest... Yeah, Johnson, us or the Krauts kind of crap. Let's see. And... yeah, so that is... yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. But yeah, if you really, really, if the historical inaccuracies really bother you about the movie, reading the the reviews voted most helpful on IMDb, at least the first 25 or so, although do note that some of them are very long, is very satisfying, and yeah, I mean, ultimately, Das Boot is a better movie in basically every way. One review points out that they have this huge orchestra for the for the depth charge sequence where Das Boot used silence to much greater effect than that. There are better patriotic war movies. There are better movies. I other than maybe John Bon Jovi, him I'm not sure about. Every single actor in this has been in better movies where they gave better performances. I don't know, maybe it's the best Jonathan Mostow movie, which is really a low bar. But again, I haven't seen the... yeah, Prison Break, that's what it's called. He directed the movie Prison Break. No, I have no idea what it's called. Anyway, it has the word break somewhere in the title. That's all I can remember. And Jack earned his nose that day. I'm sorry, that name has always been just so funny to me. Again, I really like... I think I like him in every movie I've seen him in, and that includes movies like Event Horizon. Anyway, yeah, so let's see. What was the I get not everybody, maybe some people want a more patriotic submarine movie than Das Boot. I can understand that. I would imagine there are better ones than this. And yeah, like I said, if you want to watch an American submarine movie, for sure, let's see, Hunt for Red October is better. Crimson Peak, is that what it's called? Is better with Denzel Washington and crap, I don't remember his name right now, but yeah. I'm not sure Denzel Washington has been in more than one submarine movie, so yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's just it's not particularly interesting, and yeah, but the action. David Ayer is good at writing action, and Jonathan Mostow was pretty good at directing and filming action, even when the movie surrounding it is terrible. Like, if you watch Terminator 3 and you only watch the action scenes, it's a lot less painful than sitting down and watching the entire thing. But yeah, I believe that is gonna be it for this one. For me, a very short video, but once again, I do have my back issues are worse these days, so this might be, yeah. I don't think there's anything left for me to say about it. Once again, I'm not unhappy that I watched it. I laughed a lot. It was a pretty, like, yeah, like if you sit down and watch it as like a parody of Das Boot, like, yeah, that one guy said, Mel Brooks does Das Boot. Yeah, that really is very, yeah. I guess Thomas Kretschmann in American movies. I think I do. I think I would rather watch Resident Evil Apocalypse than this. Yeah. Anyway, I believe that covers it. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording. And I'll catch you next time.